how could the US dollar end the year?
In the short term, I think there's still room for the US dollar to move higher. In fact, over the past week, markets have sharply increased their expectation for a December rate cut due to some dovish remarks from Fed officials. And the CME Fed Watch tool now shows actually an 87 probability of a 25 basis point rate cut. That shift in sentiment actually triggered a pullback in the dollar index. In other words, a lot of dovish repricing has already been reflected in the dollar's decline last week. What's interesting is that if we look back at the past 4 rate cuts by the Federal Reserve since November 2024, the US dollar actually rallied after the announcement of a Fed rate cut. So I think this is very much a sell the rumor, buy the news kind of dynamic, where the markets would tend to price in the cut ahead of time, and once that cut is actually announced, the dollar would often rebound. While the higher for longer narrative has been challenged, the nearer term strength is still very much possible, especially if the market has already priced in the coming cut. So I would say the dollar's upside in the near term is going to be more tactical than structural, but the potential for a bounce is certainly there. Looking further out over the next 12 to 24 months, the broader consensus is that the US dollar is likely to drift weaker as long as the current fundamentals continue to play out. So what most economists they expect is that the US inflation and growth should gradually cool, and the Fed will eventually need to cut rates more meaningfully. And the other economies will also start to narrow the interest rate gap with the US. But when that happens, many forecasts we are seeing, they actually forecast that the dollar index would start to ease back towards the mid-19 zone over the period. So in the short term, there are bound to be some fluctuation, but in the medium to longer term backdrop, it still leans toward a softer dollar. So the structural issues like the America's large fiscal and current account deficits, and also the view that the dollar remains somewhat overvalued, I think those factors would add to the downside pressure for the US dollar. And with that said, I think any major geopolitical or market shock could still temporarily change the picture for the US dollar. But the base case is still for a gradual decline of the US dollar over the next couple of years.